Can you think of an example of a time when you found it hard to trust yourself during an emotionally charged moment?
I don't think that during an emotionally charged moment, you are of the mind to find it hard to trust yourself. Because you are in an emotion mind state, emotion mind, and if you would need to be familiar with the 3 states of mind, right? It's in DBT, but it's also in other things. Like you have a thinking brain, an emotional brain, and when those 2 things come together, the word for it in DBT is wise mind. So emotion mind has a really tricky way of making you think that you are in wise mind. During these emotionally charged moments, I've always really thought like, no, I am making a wise mind decision. Like, this is wise. This is what I need to do. Like, your gut instinct feels so strong, but it also feels so urgent.
That is something that contributes to me even now in my own self-doubt, where I'm like, 5 minutes ago, I was convinced that this was reality, and now I'm not. I have had experiences through recovery. I didn't have them before, but as I started to develop my thinking side of myself, my logical part, my various skills, I would get into these almost like paralysis states where I am upset about something happening and I feel so strongly that things should be one way, but then I'm also simultaneously seeing it from the other person's perspective and then feeling trapped because I don't know what decision to make. I remember an instance with my husband where I kept leaving the chair to my vanity out, and he kept tripping over it in the middle of the night and hurting himself. He was getting frustrated that I kept forgetting to push this in. And I remember being stuck in this place because I simultaneously felt so misunderstood that he couldn't grasp like why this was hard for me, and at the same time realizing that he has every right to be upset because he literally keeps getting bruises on his knees because I'm not pushing this chair in. And then feeling like both like I have this emotion and I don't know what to do with it, and I don't have a right to express it either because he's right. It's like we can't both be right. And that to me, that's where I get so caught up in this spiral. And then if that goes on too long, it devolves into I'm the one with the problem. Why can't I just not be so sensitive? And that all kind of comes out of not being able to trust that I can make a good decision in that moment because I don't know, like, I can't come up with a way to like honor both sides.
I feel you there. And I think the hardest part is when I'm trying to use a skill, for example, the wise mind skill. So I don't know if my narrative of either the emotional mind or the rational mind is true. Do I listen, is all of my emotion or like are all of the fact that I'm listing down true, or is it just me being impulsive again? Am I just twisting the truth to see how it fits my narrative and try to get away out of the situation that fits me the best? So for example, if I'm getting an episode or like a really intense emotions where I'm feeling like I have a very negative feeling about this relationship, and that definitely means that this person and we cannot work out together, and I'm sitting down with my journal and my pen and I'm trying to list down these things and trying to use the wise mind skill. My mind, which is like very sly, would like supply me with like little inputs like, are you sure that's the truth, or are you sure it's a fact, or do you just like, are you writing it to like suit your own narrative? It constantly feels like there's like 2 little beings on your shoulder and they're like telling you 2 different things at the same time, and it gets hard.
Like when you list out only the bad things or only the good things, even though the reality is actually lots of things, where it's like you're writing down the facts, but it's just the facts to support the argument that you want to make in your mind.
Yeah, it just feels like I am selecting the facts to fit my own narrative,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yup. I've been there.
One of the times in my life when it was hard for me to trust myself was if I was in a problematic relationship or friendship, or even when I was maybe working at a place that just wasn't a great fit for me. My gut instinct would be, I need to leave this friendship, or I need to leave this job because it's making me miserable. But then I would always go through the what ifs, like, what if I regret this? Or what if I just mess up and then I can't go back, like so many what ifs. And so that's probably something I struggled with a lot as far as trusting myself goes, is just not tuning in to my gut instincts. I just worried so much about messing up and regretting my decision. So I struggled with that a lot when it was time for me to leave a situation or let go of someone that, maybe I did care about or whatever, but it just wasn't a good fit for me.
I feel like learning about the 3 states of mind led to me being able to know when it was safe to trust myself. Learning about trying to reach that place of wise mind, like learning about the fact that there were those 3 states and then how to come into wise mind was my breakthrough, because I realized that I was making a lot of decisions from my gut, but in the wrong state of mind. And so I learned to slow things down. I was like, oh, wait a second, maybe I should check with myself. Like, am I in the place where I can trust myself on what I'm thinking about doing?
This kind of brings us to another question, which has sort of been, we've sort of talked about this in a vague way, but there's your gut instinct and then there's your emotion. Do any of you have things that help you differentiate between what's a gut instinct and like being stuck in a place where your emotions are clouding your judgment?
The very honest answer would be no, I don't. But what I've realized is that emotions can be helpful in ways. It does not necessarily always have to be debilitating. Every time we are experiencing an intense emotion, it is trying to tell us something. Even if our gut instincts are asking us to do something impulsive, maybe that's not the right way to execute the action, but the emotion that comes behind it has a reason to exist. And I can't distinguish between like my gut instinct and an emotionally clouded brain, which means that sometimes I do end up taking the wrong decision or making the wrong judgment. And it's okay, because while making the wrong judgment or probably the wrong decision, it acts as a lesson. So if I remember it from the next time onwards, I probably would not make the same mistake again. And it does not necessarily always have to work in favor of me, as long as it's not detrimental to me or anybody else. I can afford to make 1 or 2 mistakes, and that's fine. So this is not just about how every time you would have a clarified mind where you know what to do, because it doesn't happen like that. And we would always have doubts and we'll end up making mistakes, but that's okay.
I think for me, a lot of it is spending time analyzing what I do and the things that go on around me, and trying to account for as many of the variables as I can in an analytical way. And it can be very exhausting. I think that's one of the hard parts about recovery. I don't always get to choose the timing. It's not like practicing an instrument where you can set aside these 5 hours and that's when I'll do it, right? Like doing the work for your mental health is like in the moment that something's happening, and it will come at you often in the worst possible time. But for me, like just spending a lot of time looking over situations and thinking about all the possibilities has really helped me to get a little bit of a sense. And I get, the one thing I will say is that if I am in a situation and I feel like I have to make a decision, if I feel like I have to do something in that exact moment and there aren't any actual reasons why it has to be done in that exact moment, that's a good sign to me that I am probably letting my emotions cloud my judgment. That's a sign to me I need to take a few minutes and let the intensity fade before I make any big decisions. I frequently will use something called the 24-hour rule, especially if something can wait that long. Because sometimes I can really stew over something for a while, but if I give it a night, go to sleep, wake up the next day, and I still want to make that same decision, that's when I start seriously considering it. I think realizing that a lot of decisions don't actually have to be made immediately has been really, really helpful for me.
There's very few decisions in life that have to be made immediately, but we like to think we are confronted with a lot of them.
So true.
Mm-hmm.
I find emotionality and gut instinct to be very, very much intertwined, and I find it hard to really separate either of them from each other. I think that it's important when we talk about all of these things to remember that the emotion mind serves a purpose. You don't achieve wise mind by extrapolating one or the other, right? You put them both together and that's when you get wise mind. Emotions serve a purpose. Emotions protect us. Sometimes they also cause us to overreact to things. And the journey to figuring out which is which and when it's serving a purpose takes a lot of time and is a lot of trial and error, I think, and very dependent as well on what you've been exposed to, what values and practices and approaches to things you've witnessed over your life. I mean, I owe a lot of mine, I think, to my mum and my dad. I think my mum and my dad, in a way, my dad is like the rational mind and my mum is the emotional mind, and they come together and usually respond to things as a unit in a reasonable way. And I think have taken a lot away from that. It's not about removing emotion from the equation. It's actually just about trying to find harmony with it, in my opinion anyway, and learning when it's serving a purpose and when it's causing you to maybe make things more difficult for yourself or for others.
My therapist in my DBT group would talk about this by saying, like, if we didn't have emotion, we wouldn't even be able to pick a spaghetti sauce. Like, and I liked that analogy because it brought it down a level, like picking a spaghetti sauce is not a high stakes situation. So it was a good example of like emotion. We use emotion all the time, like, what am I going to wear today? Oh, I feel good in this, oh, I like that spaghetti sauce because it's what my mom bought. And that brings all, these feelings in. So emotion we need both. You can't operate completely from a non-emotional place.
So Mo, you've talked a lot about like acting on your gut. So I'm curious, like, how do you tell the difference?
For me, the way I know that I can trust my judgment and my reactions and everything is how calm I feel. Like if my reactions or feelings about something is like really strong and intense and urgent feeling, that's usually my emotions taking over. And so if I'm able to like sit down and think about something and I'm in a calmer state of mind, then that's when I know that I can trust that voice in my head.
I think something that I do to help give me some sort of indication of when I'm acting on impulse is I write a lot. Because I'm a PhD student, a lot of the times that conflicts arise, they tend to be between myself and professors or myself and other colleagues in some capacity. So something that I tend to do is I sort of draft emails, and I'm like, if I'm going on and on and on and writing about this in extraneous detail, like I'm really being overly descriptive, then I know that I'm not in the right frame of mind to deal with this at the moment, because I'm giving this person a ton of information, a ton of cannon fodder, really, more so. I'm giving them a lot of material to use that I shouldn't. I'm telling them a lot of facts that they don't care about. that is not conducive to solving the situation at all. So I use that as a metric. And I even did this like the past couple of weeks. There was a couple of moments where something might have happened and I drafted out an email and I was like, nah, this is like a page, you know? And when I did eventually send the email, it was like 4 sentences. So that's the kind of like drastic difference we're talking about. And that's usually very indicative to me of when I should and maybe should not be doing something.
If you could give advice to someone struggling with trusting themselves, what would it be?
I would say that if you only learn like one dialectic behavioral therapy concept, to learn the concept of the different states of mind and how to integrate them to come into that state of wise mind, because that's been the most helpful thing for me in learning to trust myself, was recognizing the states of mind, learning how to get into that state of mind where I feel like I can trust myself. So that would be my one piece of advice.
Keep your mind open and allow yourself to make the wrong decision once in a while, because trusting ourselves does not mean trusting ourselves to make the right decision all the time, trusting ourselves to do the right thing all the time. Trusting ourselves means that we can rely on ourselves to know what is good for us.
My advice is to let your emotions run their course before you make a decision, and also realize that it takes a while before you can like get to a place where you feel like you can tap into your wise mind. So give yourself time. Don't beat yourself up if you end up making the wrong choice or whatever. Just let your emotions run their course before you decide what to do.
I think my advice might sound a little bit abstract, but I think to remember that a lot of us have been encouraged to doubt ourselves extensively, and that this is an uphill battle in a way for many of us, but in equal measures to remember that as much as society might like to believe that there's often a uniform, singular approach to 90% of things, that's often not the case. And that there's room for nuance in all of these conversations, and that it is definitely a journey and a give and take. And there's a lot of discussion that can be had around most decisions that we take. So if you feel one way and a lot of people around you might feel another, that doesn't inherently indicate that you're wrong.
As long as you're not hurting yourself or anybody else, if you're just doing something a little bit differently, so what? The end.